My name is Evelyn. I'm 56 years old and I live in a small house tucked away in the corner of a quiet suburban neighborhood. From the outside, it looks like a place where everything is in order. Neat garden, white fence, a porch where I sometimes sit and watch the world pass by. But I've always felt like a shadow in my own life, observing but never truly participating. I suppose that's the result of years of silence. I haven't always been this way, though. There was a time when my life felt full, vibrant even. That was before everything fell apart, before Peter. Peter was the love of my life once, or at least that's what I told myself. We met when I was just out of college, young, eager to make something of myself. He was charming, handsome, and at the time seemed like the perfect match. We got married after 2 years of dating. Young love, they call it. Everyone thought we were the perfect couple. He was a lawyer. I worked in finance. We had it all: a house, cars, vacations, the kind of life that others looked at and envied. But of course, envy is a dangerous thing. The cracks started showing after 10 years when Peter started working longer hours. I didn't mind. He was dedicated, a good provider. But I wasn't the same person I had been when we first met. I'd changed too. Or maybe I had just gotten lost in the routine of it all. So I threw myself into my work. I found solace in spreadsheets, in quarterly reports, in the satisfaction of getting everything right. I spent 20 years at the same financial firm. I built my career from the ground up. I wasn't a partner like Peter, but I was good at what I did. I had my own small corner in the office, surrounded by my meticulously organized files. I earned respect, but nothing lasts forever. It was 15 years ago that I met her. Her name was Rachel. She was new, fresh-faced, eager to prove herself. I didn't think much of her at first. She was just another young woman looking to climb the corporate ladder. But Rachel was smart, and she was patient. At first, I thought it was just her ambition driving her. But over time, I realized something darker was at play. Rachel started spending more time with Peter. She would bring him coffee, engage in long conversations at the office, often sitting so close to him that I could hear her laugh all the way across the room. I ignored it. I told myself it was nothing. I was focused on my work, after all. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. Then the accusations came. It was a slow build-up, almost imperceptible at first, like a storm gathering on the horizon. One day, my boss, Mr. Jenkins, called me into his office. He sat me down, looked me in the eye, and told me that I was under investigation. Under investigation for what? I asked, my voice steady, though my heart was pounding. There are reports, he said, allegations that you've been leaking company data to clients. I was stunned. It didn't make sense. I had worked my entire career with integrity. But there it was. Rachel had made the accusation. She had told Mr. Jenkins that she had seen me passing sensitive files to clients outside of the company. I knew that I hadn't done anything of the sort, but it didn't matter. The damage had been done. I fought back. I begged for proof. But it was always the same answer. We're investigating. We have our process. Weeks went by. I kept coming into work, keeping my head down, trying to figure out who would have done this to me. It didn't take long to figure it out. Rachel had been sitting at Peter's side in meetings, nodding in agreement whenever she spoke. Slowly, I began to realize that it was more than just a coincidence. Then, one day, the truth hit me like a ton of bricks. Peter knew. He knew exactly what she was doing, and he was supporting her. Rachel was moving in, quietly taking my place at the company, all while I was being pushed out. I was fired from my job. The reputation I had spent my entire career building was shattered, and I watched as Rachel was promoted to the position I had worked so hard to earn. Peter didn't even try to stop it. In fact, when I confronted him, his response was cold and indifferent. "You're not the same woman I married, Evelyn," he said. "I can't do this anymore." And just like that, he was gone. That was the moment everything fell apart. The house was sold. The life we had built was scattered to the wind. I was left with nothing, no job, no husband, no sense of purpose. I spent the next few years in a haze, doing whatever I could to survive. I moved into a small apartment, took whatever odd jobs I could find. But nothing felt the same. I couldn't let go of the anger, the betrayal. I couldn't stop thinking about Rachel, the woman who had taken everything from me. But over time, life has a way of moving forward, whether you want it to or not. Slowly, I stopped thinking about the past as much. I focused on my son, Kevin. He was the only thing that kept me going. He was my anchor, the one thing that still made sense. I poured my energy into him, raising him alone. And that's where I am now. Alone, yes, but not entirely lost. I'm still here. I still hold on to the fragments of who I was. It was a Tuesday afternoon when Kevin called. I was sitting at my kitchen table, staring out the window. The hum of the world outside almost drowned out by the quiet of the house. My coffee had gone cold, the steam long gone. I hadn't been sleeping well lately, waking up in the middle of the night with memories that refused to stay buried. The silence of the house, once comforting, now felt suffocating. I heard my phone ring, its shrill sound cutting through the stillness. Kevin's name flashed across the screen. My son. I picked up the phone with a practiced smile. "Hey, Mom," he said, his voice bright, easy, just like always. He had that gift of sounding like everything was fine, even when it wasn't. I sometimes wondered if he was trying to convince himself as much as he was trying to convince me. "Hey, sweetheart, how's everything going?" I asked, my voice a little too light, like I could somehow make the moment seem normal. "Good, actually. I've got something to tell you." I sat up straighter, feeling the weight of his words before they even landed. "What is it?" He paused for a moment, as if gathering his thoughts. "I wanted to invite you over for Thanksgiving dinner. There's someone I'd like you to meet." I felt a tightness in my chest, a flutter of something I couldn't name. Thanksgiving. The holiday I had always made special for our family. The holiday that had once meant laughter and joy, when Peter and I would cook together, carving the turkey, setting the table with the fancy china I'd inherited from my grandmother. Back when it was us, back when everything was still intact. "That sounds nice, Kevin," I said, though I couldn't shake the unease that was creeping up my spine. "Who's the someone you want me to meet?" There was a slight hesitation before he answered, and I caught it. The pause was almost imperceptible, but I knew my son well enough by now to sense the small cracks in his facade. "My fiancée, Rachel," he said. "I've been dating her for a while now, and I want you to meet her." Rachel. My heart lurched in my chest, and for a moment I couldn't breathe. Of all the names he could have chosen, it had to be hers. It had to be Rachel. I managed to swallow the lump in my throat. "Rachel," I repeated, my voice steady but strained. I, I'd love to meet her, sweetheart. Of course." He couldn't have known how the name hit me, how it pulled at the very core of the woman I'd tried so hard to become. He couldn't have known how deeply her presence in my life still cut. But he didn't need to. He was my son, and despite everything, I loved him. "Great. We'll be there on Thursday around 6. I'll bring her by then. You're gonna like her, Mom. I promise." I didn't trust myself to speak immediately. All I could do was nod. The words were there, stuck somewhere in my chest, but I didn't say them. I didn't need to. "Okay, Kevin," I finally said. "I'll see you then." The call ended and the quiet returned, but this time it felt heavier, more suffocating. My mind was racing, thoughts tumbling over one another. But there was one question I kept coming back to. Why Rachel? I knew her, or at least I thought I did. She had already taken so much from me, the years of my life that I would never get back, the reputation I would never rebuild, the trust I had lost in people, in myself. She was coming to my house. Thanksgiving had always been a holiday I'd tried to keep special for Kevin. It was something I held on to after everything else fell apart. It was my way of pretending that I could still give him something, something that felt real, something that felt like family. But now, the thought of her sitting at my table, of watching her smile and laugh with Kevin, of her being a part of my life again, it was too much. It was too much for my heart to bear, and yet there was nothing I could do to change it. As the evening wore on, I sat in the kitchen, staring at the empty table. I'd set it, as I always did for Thanksgiving, with the fine china, the silverware polished and gleaming. The turkey I had bought earlier in the day was roasting in the oven, its smell filling the air. Everything was perfect, just like it always had been. But there was something different now, something that felt wrong. I felt the walls closing in on me. The anger, the betrayal, everything I had buried, everything was surfacing now. I had no choice but to face it. Rachel was coming to my home, and I had no idea how I was supposed to act. I spent the next few hours preparing. The stuffing, the mashed potatoes, the cranberry sauce. I set the table with more care than I had in years, hoping to create an illusion. I tried to push down the images of Rachel sitting at that table, laughing with Kevin, the two of them so happy and unaware of what had happened before. I didn't want to think about it, but it was impossible to stop. And so, I waited. Thursday arrived too quickly. I woke up early, the faintest remnants of a restless night clinging to my thoughts. The house was quiet, and the world outside felt crisp, cold. The sun was low in the sky, casting long shadows across the front yard. I tried to focus on the day ahead, on the meal I'd spent hours preparing, on the hope that this holiday could still feel like it used to. But the gnawing uncertainty lingered in the pit of my stomach. I dressed carefully. The deep burgundy sweater I chose felt warm, soft, something familiar. It was as close to comfort as I could get. I moved through the morning with the precision of someone going through the motions, trying to stay grounded to avoid thinking too much about what was coming. By the time 6 o'clock rolled around, I was standing by the front door, my hand resting on the knob, heart beating faster than it should have. I had been waiting for this moment all day, and yet, now that it was here, I wasn't sure I was ready. I heard the familiar sound of a car pulling into the driveway, followed by the crunch of tires against gravel. My stomach dropped. I knew it was them. I took a deep breath and opened the door. Kevin was standing there, as I expected, smiling, dressed casually, but with a certain brightness in his eyes. He always did have that lightness to him, like everything could be fixed with a smile. His fiancée was standing next to him, and there she was, Rachel. At first, I didn't recognize her. It was strange, but the face in front of me seemed unfamiliar, as if time had worn away some of the details. She was older than I remembered, maybe a little thinner, her hair now a shade of blonde that was almost white in the dim evening light. But the moment her eyes met mine, I knew. I knew exactly who she was. I felt my breath catch in my chest. The same eyes, the same smile that had once been so warm, so convincing. The same woman who had destroyed my life 15 years ago. The one who had framed me, who had turned my entire career upside down with a single lie. She stood there, her smile widening as she greeted me, her voice warm, casual, the way you would greet a relative you hadn't seen in a long time. "Hi, Mrs. Wilkins," she said, her voice almost syrupy sweet. "It's so nice to finally meet you." I swallowed hard, forcing myself to smile. to act like I didn't know. I was better than this. I was calm. I was composed. But inside, I felt the years of anger and betrayal resurfacing all at once, threatening to flood me with emotions I had long buried. I felt my hands tremble, but I didn't let it show. I had learned long ago that silence was my strongest weapon. "Welcome," I said, my voice steady, though there was a sharpness in it that I couldn't fully conceal. "It's good to meet you too, Rachel." Kevin, oblivious to the storm brewing inside me, took a step forward and wrapped his arms around me in a quick hug. "Mom, this is Rachel. I'm so glad you finally got to meet." I nodded, my smile tightening. It felt surreal, like I was watching this moment happen from outside my own body. Rachel was standing there, smiling as if nothing had ever happened, as if she hadn't been the one to take everything from me. "Thank you for having us over, Mrs. Wilkins," Rachel continued, still smiling. She had the nerve to act like she had no idea who I was, like she hadn't been the one to ruin my reputation, my career, my life. I nodded again, my voice cold but polite. "Please, come in. Dinner is almost ready." Kevin and Rachel stepped inside, and I closed the door behind them. I led them into the dining room, where the table was set just like it had been all those years ago, perfectly arranged, with the plates, silverware, and candles I'd carefully placed. The turkey was carved, the sides set in neat bowls. It looked like the Thanksgiving dinners I used to create, back when everything was still whole, before everything shattered. Kevin pulled out a chair for Rachel, his hand on her back. "Mom, everything looks amazing. You really outdid yourself." I nodded, though I barely heard his words. All I could think about was Rachel, how she was sitting there, so casually, like she belonged. I took my seat at the head of the table, my eyes drifting to Rachel every now and then. She was talking about how Kevin and she had met at work, how they'd clicked right away. Her voice was smooth, practiced, her words easy, but I wasn't listening to any of it. I could barely even focus on the food in front of me. All I could hear was the faint echo of the past, a whisper in my mind, reminding me of how she had destroyed everything, how she had framed me, accusing me of leaking confidential information to clients, how she had taken my job, my career, my dignity, and then, when I had been pushed out, when I had nothing left, she had taken my place, climbing the corporate ladder while I was left to pick up the pieces of my broken life. But she thought I'd forgotten. She thought I had moved on. That time had erased what she had done. She couldn't have been more wrong. Dinner proceeded with a strange sort of rhythm, as if the room were suspended in some uneasy limbo. The clinking of silverware on china, the occasional murmur of conversation, everything felt disconnected, like a performance. Kevin chatted animatedly with Rachel, unaware of the tension that had slowly begun to settle over me like a heavy blanket. I watched them both, particularly Rachel. She seemed so innocent, so unaware. Her laugh was too bright, too loud for someone who had once destroyed my life. She spoke of trivial things, of work, of their plans for the future, and Kevin seemed to hang on every word, as if nothing at all was out of place. She looked like someone who belonged in that chair, who belonged in this house. But I knew better. I knew what she had done. As Rachel spoke, I couldn't help but imagine her as the young woman I had known 15 years ago, bright-eyed, ambitious, eager to climb the corporate ladder at any cost. I could almost hear her voice in my mind, that same smooth, deceptive tone she used when she'd first turned on me at work. The same tone that had been so convincing, so sure of itself when she accused me of leaking information to clients. I could almost feel the weight of her betrayal all over again, the crushing disbelief when my own boss had believed her, when they had let me go without a second thought. But here she was now, sitting at my table, eating my food, talking about her future with my son, as if she hadn't wrecked mine. I wanted to say something, anything, but I didn't. I stayed silent. I always did. There was power in silence. I had learned that over the years. When you said nothing, when you allowed the weight of the truth to hang in the air without uttering a word, it often made people uncomfortable. They began to feel the gravity of the situation. They began to wonder why you weren't responding, why you weren't speaking. Rachel wasn't looking at me now. She was too busy laughing with Kevin, too busy wrapping herself in the warmth of the moment, but I kept my gaze fixed on her. And when our eyes finally met across the table, there was nothing in my expression, no rage, no contempt, just calm, a calm so deep it was almost cold. She didn't recognize it, though. She smiled at me, the same way she had smiled all those years ago when she'd walked into my office and told me how much she admired my work, how much she looked up to me. I had been naive back then, too trusting. She had played me like a fool. I could tell she was trying to gauge me, trying to figure out if I knew who she really was. Her eyes flickered for a moment, as if searching for something in mine, but she quickly looked away, continuing to speak with Kevin. I let her believe that I had forgotten, let her believe that the years had washed away all the pain, all the betrayal, let her think that she had gotten away with it. But I hadn't forgotten. I never would. I knew exactly who she was. As dinner wore on, I barely touched my plate. The food, the conversation, the laughter, it all felt so distant, as if I were watching everything unfold from a place far removed. My mind wasn't on the present. It was on the past, on the things Rachel had done to me, and as I sat there, watching her interact with Kevin, I began to make my plans. I couldn't confront her now. I couldn't expose her to my son in this moment, not in front of the holiday table, not when it was supposed to be about family. But I didn't need to. I had other ways of getting the truth out. The meal came to an end, but the quiet lingered. Kevin stood up and stretched, excusing himself to grab his phone from the other room. Rachel, too, began to move, adjusting her chair with a little more grace than was necessary. I could see the way she flitted around the room, trying to make herself comfortable, trying to find a way to belong. And for a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. It must be exhausting, pretending to be something you're not, pretending to be the perfect fiancé when the truth of who you are lurks just beneath the surface. I pushed my chair back slowly and stood up. The light in the kitchen was dim now, the soft glow of the lamps casting long shadows across the counter. I knew the house well enough to know that Kevin would be distracted for a while, absorbed in whatever was on his phone. Rachel, too, would be preoccupied with something in the other room. I'd seen her glance at her phone earlier, checking a message she'd quickly tucked away. Something she didn't want me to see. The familiarity of it made my stomach turn. It was all part of the same pattern, the same person I remembered from all those years ago. So confident, so assured of her own success, so willing to sacrifice others to get ahead. I walked into Kevin's room and sat down at his desk. His laptop was open, as I had anticipated. The quiet hum of the machine felt like a faint heartbeat in the stillness. My fingers hovered over the keys for a moment, and I took a deep breath. This was it. This was the moment where everything would begin to unravel. I didn't need to shout, to make accusations, or to create a scene. No, I had learned that the most powerful way to expose the truth was often through silence. Words could be denied, twisted, forgotten, but documents, proof, evidence, they couldn't be erased. Not easily, not without a trace. I opened the browser window on Kevin's laptop and quickly navigated to the folder I had been adding to over the years. It was a quiet, meticulous process, my fingers dancing over the keys as I pulled up the old files, the ones that held the memories of that betrayal. The emails, the reports, the correspondence between Rachel and my boss, the spreadsheets, the dates, the times. Every detail was there. Everything she had done to destroy me was documented. The proof was irrefutable. I didn't hesitate. I opened the first document, carefully checking everything one last time before leaving the tab open and walking away. When I returned to the living room, I saw Rachel standing by the window, gazing out at the street as if lost in thought. I almost felt pity for her again. Almost. She turned as I entered, smiling that same smile, the one that had once been so disarming. "Everything's so beautiful here," she said softly, her voice syrupy sweet. "You've done such a great job with the house, Evelyn." I smiled in return, but it was a smile that held no warmth. "Thank you, Rachel. It's good to have the house filled with people again." She looked at me curiously, as if she were trying to read something in my expression. "I'm glad we could all be together." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. I didn't need to say anything. The truth had already begun its quiet, invisible march forward. There was nothing Rachel could do to stop it now. Kevin reappeared a few moments later, slipping his phone back into his pocket and smiling at us both. "Everything okay?" he asked, oblivious to the tension hanging thick in the air. "Perfect," I said, my voice steady, controlled. "I'm just going to finish cleaning up. Rachel, would you like some tea?" She smiled, but there was something in her eyes that I recognized, a flicker of uncertainty, like she was waiting for something. Maybe she could feel it too, that sense that something was about to shift. "No, thank you," she said, her voice now a little tighter. "I think I'll go freshen up before bed." "Of course," I replied, keeping my expression neutral. "The bathroom's just down the hall." As she moved toward the bathroom, I stayed where I was, sitting down at the kitchen table and staring at the empty space around me. Everything had been set into motion, and there was no turning back now. I could hear her footsteps retreat down the hall, the soft sound of the door clicking shut behind her. In the silence that followed, I exhaled slowly, allowing myself a brief moment of relief. I hadn't made a scene. I hadn't let my emotions slip. But in the stillness, the truth was already there, waiting for her. The documents were there. The proof was there. And tomorrow, Kevin would see it all for himself. The house was quiet the next morning. The remnants of the holiday still lingered. The empty plates on the kitchen counter, the half-eaten pies left untouched, the faint scent of turkey still clinging to the air. Rachel had left before I even woke up, slipping out quietly. No goodbyes, no fanfare. I suppose she felt it too, the growing discomfort, the tension between us. Kevin was still sleeping. The silence in the house was almost oppressive, thick with unspoken words and unfinished business. I went about my morning routine mechanically, preparing coffee and staring out of the window. The stillness outside mirrored the stillness within me. There was no excitement, no rush. The hardest part was over. I had set the truth in motion, and now it was only a matter of time before it found its way to Kevin. I didn't know when exactly it would happen, but I could feel it, the weight of the coming confrontation. It was in the air, like the calm before a storm. About an hour later, my phone rang. I saw Kevin's name on the screen, and my heart skipped a beat. This was it. I felt a strange, almost detached calm wash over me as I answered the call. "Hey, Mom." Kevin's voice was strained, cautious. "We need to talk." I didn't respond right away. I wasn't sure what to say. He was probably still processing what he had seen on his laptop, still trying to wrap his head around the revelation that the woman he loved was the same one who had destroyed my life. "Sure, Kevin, what's on your mind?" I kept my voice even, as if this were just another regular conversation. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. I could hear him breathing, his hesitation palpable. Finally, he spoke, his voice thick with confusion and disbelief. "Mom, why didn't you tell me?" he asked quietly. I closed my eyes. There it was, the question I had known would come, but I didn't rush to answer. I let the silence stretch between us. There was nothing to explain, really, nothing that needed to be said. I had made my decision long ago. I had chosen silence, and now the truth was all that was left. "You should have seen for yourself," I said finally, my voice steady, but the weight of the words hanging heavy in the air. "I couldn't tell you. Not then, not before. You needed to know the truth on your own, Kevin." Another pause. I could hear the gears turning in his mind, the disbelief fading into anger, and then back to confusion. I don't, I don't understand," he said, his voice breaking. She, she told me she was just trying to help you, that that you'd lost control. She said you were the one who messed everything up at work." I swallowed hard, the memories rushing back, sharper now. The way Rachel had manipulated everyone, how she had painted me as the villain, how she had twisted the truth to serve her own interests. "She lied to you," I replied quietly. "All of it. Every single word. You don't even know what she took from me, Kevin. You have no idea what she did to destroy my life." I, I don't know what to think, Mom. This is insane. I thought I knew her. I trusted her." "I know," I said softly. "I trusted her too." Another silence fell over the line. Kevin was processing, trying to make sense of everything. I could hear his breath hitch, the sound of him trying to steady himself. "I don't know what to say," he admitted. "I don't even know where to go from here." I leaned against the counter, feeling the weight of the years I had spent burying this, the weight of the silence I had carried. But now it was all coming out, one painful piece at a time. "You don't have to say anything, Kevin," I said, my voice almost a whisper now. "I don't need anything from you. All I wanted was for you to see the truth, and now you have." There was a long pause, and for a moment I thought he might hang up. But then he spoke again, his voice calmer, quieter. "Do you want me to confront her? To talk to her?" I closed my eyes again. The answer was simple. "No," I said firmly. "That's your choice, Kevin, but the truth is already out. There's nothing left to say." "Okay," he said softly. "Okay, I'll figure this out. Thanks, Mom." The call ended with a soft click. I sat there for a long time, holding the phone in my hand, the silence pressing in on me again. And just like that, it was over. The truth had been revealed, and nothing could change that. I spent the next day in a kind of numbness. The house was eerily quiet. I had hoped that Kevin would come back with questions, perhaps even with some kind of apology, but instead, there was only the lingering silence. The truth had been set free, and now there was nothing left to do but wait. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't need to. All those years of pain, of betrayal, of feeling powerless, it had all led to this. And now it was done. I spent the rest of the afternoon going through the motions, cooking, cleaning, sitting by the window, staring out at the empty street. Thanksgiving had come and gone, but it felt like nothing more than a memory now. There were no more pretenses, no more lies to uphold. The woman who had stolen my career, my reputation, and nearly everything I had was gone from my life once and for all. But strangely, I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel bitter either. I felt empty. In a way, it was like I had been carrying a weight for years, and now it had been lifted. I was free, but the price of that freedom had been steep. When evening came, I set the table for one. I didn't bother to make it elaborate. There was no need. The house was still, and for the first time in a long while, I felt a quiet peace. There would be no phone calls from Kevin, no more disruptions. The storm had passed. I had expected him to show up, perhaps wanting to explain himself or to confront me one more time. But the door remained closed. The house stayed silent. I ate alone, as I had done so many times before. It wasn't the same, though. I wasn't lonely anymore. I had been lonely before, but now I had something I hadn't had in years: control, the power to shape my own life again, the power to move on. There was no grand resolution, no dramatic closure, no final showdown. It was just me, sitting at the table, eating my meal, and knowing that everything had changed. Later that evening, my phone rang again. This time, it was a text from Kevin. He didn't have to say much. The words were simple, almost apologetic. "I'm sorry, Mom. I don't know what to do, but I understand now. Thank you for showing me the truth. I'll handle it. I love you." I stared at the message for a long time before I put the phone down. There was nothing more to say. He would figure it out. He would move on, and so would I. Rachel was out of my life now, gone for good. The path was clear ahead of me. I stood up from the table and walked to the window. The streetlights outside flickered in the distance, casting a dim glow over the empty road. It was late, and the world outside was quiet too. And then I smiled to myself, not because I was happy exactly, but because I had reclaimed my peace. The past no longer had a hold on me. I had nothing left to fear. Rachel had taken so much from me, but she could never take this: the strength to rebuild, the courage to stand tall, and the quiet satisfaction of knowing that, in the end, I had come out on top, not through vengeance, but through truth. I took one last look around the empty house, my house, and felt the final threads of my old life slip away. And as they did, I realized I wasn't just letting go of the past. I was finally embracing the future. And that future was mine. I turned off the lights, walked down the hallway, and closed my bedroom door behind me. The house was still silent, but for the first time in years, that silence felt like a kind of peace. I was done, done with lies, done with fear, done with pretending. The truth had set me free, and now I was finally free to live,